Hello and welcome to the History of Bangalore. I'm Ramjee Chandran and I'm today on episode 103 of season 2. There's just one episode left to complete the season and that will be a recap of the season, so let's make this one count. In the last episode, I walked you through the action-packed years following the end of the First Anglo-Mysore War, the obvious duplicity of the British who reneged on their signed promises, and a look at how astute Hyder Ali really was. By 1780, Hyder Ali saw that the next war was inevitable. He assembled a grand alliance, and at Bangalore, one saw the largest army this region had ever seen. 28,000 cavalry, 62,000 infantry, and today's episode is about the Second Anglo-Mysore War. Now, I'm going to get there in a hurry, but first, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank my sponsors, the Prestige Group. It's because of them that this podcast becomes possible. Building cities one landmark at a time, they transform dreams into reality. You can be a part of the future. Simply add prestige to your life. That day was the 20th of July 1780. Hyder Ali led his massive army, the coalition of Marathas, the Nizam and himself, down from the Mysore plateau and sweeping into the Carnatic. One should take a look now at what Hyder Ali was at that point in time. To begin with, he was approximately 60 years old. He had been a soldier for more than 4 decades. He had fought the Marathas, the Nizam, the Portuguese, the British, and also the internal enemies of his own state. He had built from nothing one of the most formidable military machines in 18th century Asia. And Hyder Ali was angry. His invasion of the Carnatic was not some kind of a tactical maneuver. It was a reckoning. The British had humiliated him. They had broken every provision of the Treaty of Madras that they had signed, like doing nothing when the Marathas ravaged his kingdom, and then doing something like seizing the French port of Mahe, which was under Hyder's explicit protection, without so much as a formal communication to Hyder. It was disrespectful to the point of insulting. Every grievance, every betrayal had been filed away in his mind and it rankled. Now, with an army of 90,000 men, almost 100,000 men at his back, Hyder Ali was about to present the bill. Hyder devastated the Carnatic with a thoroughness that left all the contemporary observers struggling for words. Villages burned, crops destroyed, the fertile coastal plain that the British depended on for supplies and revenues stripped bare from one end to the other. This was scorched earth on a strategic scale, not merely a tactical inconvenience for a pursuing army, but a systematic dismantling of the very economic foundation on which the British power in the south rested. By doing all of this, Hyder Ali had plunged the Madras presidency into a state of crisis even before a single pitched battle had been fought. Speaking of pitched battles, next came the Battle of Pollilur. On the 10th of September 1780, a British detachment of nearly 4,000 men, serving under Colonel William Bailey, was marching through the Carnatic to join the main army, which was under Hector Munro. Hyder dispatched Tipu Sultan to intercept them. It was in every sense Tipu Sultan's finest moment. His first major independent command in a war of this scale against a British force of this size. Bailey's men formed a defensive square. It was the famous hedgehog formation that I've spoken of before. It had served the British very well at Changam 13 years earlier. When they formed themselves into a square, basically it was a square of the soldiers facing outwards in all 4 directions, the front row kneeling, the force behind them being able to fire their muskets. Hyder's cavalry could not penetrate that wall because horses would not charge into a wall of steel. So that discipline held and the cavalry could not break it, and for a time it appeared that that hedgehog formation could do its work again, this time at Pollilur. What they had not accounted for were rockets. Then the rockets came. Mysore's rocket corps fired into the packed formation, right into the heart of those hedgehogs. Now, two of the British ammunition tumbrils, they're called, those are wheeled carts carrying gunpowder and shot, were hit by one of the rockets. They exploded simultaneously, raining fire and debris onto all the men crowded inside that hedgehog square. The hedgehog shattered. The gap that opened was all Tipu's cavalry needed. They charged through it. The square collapsed into chaos, screaming men, burning powder, the wreckage of everything that military discipline had built. Bailey, wounded, raised a white handkerchief on his sword. He was surrendering what remained of his force, at least to save their lives. As it turned out, it was at most to save their lives. The psychological impact of the Battle of Pollilur was total, and it radiated outward from the battlefield in ways that no military dispatch could contain. Hector Munro, who was the celebrated victor of the Battle of Buxar, the man who had broken the grand coalition of Mir Qasim, the Nawab of Awadh, and Shah Alam II in a single stroke in 1764, not too long ago, received the news of Bailey's destruction, and he lost his nerve entirely. He ordered that all his heavy guns get thrown into the temple tank at Kanchipuram. He then fled to Chingalpet, abandoning his baggage, his stores, and entire regulation in one single disgraceful retreat. Military historians have described Munro's flight as the conclusion of one of the most brief and discreditable campaigns in British military history. The Madras presidency was already stretched, was already anxious, and now it fell into a state of terminal paralysis. The company's position in southern India had been built over a century and half of patient, ruthless accumulation, appeared for the first time to be genuinely at risk. In London, the British Parliament debated this. In Calcutta, the capital of India, Warren Hastings acted. The man that Warren Hastings had picked as an answer to this problem was Eyre Coote. He was 60 years old in poor health, and he had not commanded in the field for years. But he was also one of the finest soldiers that British had produced in India. He was the victor of the Battle of Wandiwash in 1760, the officer who had broken French power in the south a generation before. What Warren Hastings understood, that what the Madras presidency needed was not merely a commander. It needed a symbol, a man whose name alone would steady the panic. Now let's get to that commercial break, and when I'm back very soon, let's get on with the rest of the story right after this.
Maximum connectivity, maximum luxury, maximum lifestyle. Live your max at Prestige Raintree Park. Opulent residences nestled in 21 acres of breathtaking landscape with 1 lakh plus square feet of clubhouse, 3 swimming pools, and ample leisure and sports amenities. Experience exquisite living at Prestige Raintree Park in prime Whitefield with schools, offices, hospitals, and shopping malls just a hop away. Call 81399 81399 or visit prestigeconstructions.com to know more. Radar approved.
Eyre Coote arrived in Madras in November 1780, immediately set about rebuilding what Munro's retreat had broken. What was broken was the confidence of an army that had watched his heavy guns disappear into a temple tank. The campaigns of 1781 were the turning points of the war. Not because they had destroyed Hyder Ali, they did not, but because they established for the first time in this conflict that the British could hold their ground against him in open battle. And here's how it happened. On the 1st of July 1781, the two sexagenarians, think about it, both of them 60 years old, met at Porto Novo. Hyder had fortified a position that Eyre Coote described as the most formidable that he had ever seen. Through 8 hours of grueling struggle under a murderous sun, Coote turned Hyder's flank. It was a narrow victory, but a victory nonetheless. It broke the spell of Mysorean invincibility. Hyder, reflecting on the result of this battle, made an observation that has been quoted ever since. He said to his confidants, "The defeat of many Baileys will not destroy these English. I can ruin their resources by land, but I cannot dry up the sea." It was, in a way, the most honest assessment of the strategic situation that anyone on either side had produced. Hyder Ali understood at Porto Novo that the war he had spent 30 years preparing for simply could not be won. Not because his army was inferior, but because the British could be resupplied by sea indefinitely, and he could not stop them. 1 month after Porto Novo, the armies met again on the battlefield, again at Pollilur, on the same ground where Bailey's men had died. Coote soldiers fought with what the accounts describe as vengeful fury, surrounded by the sun-bleached bones of their unburied comrades. Hyder lost that battle, and he was forced to retreat towards the interior of the plateau. At Sholingur on the 27th of September 1781, Coote defeated Hyder again. The 21st Carnatic Battalion captured a Mysore standard. Now, this was a significant symbolic moment in a battle that confirmed the direction that the war had taken. And now, the tide had turned. Maybe the tide had turned, but Hyder was not finished. He never simply accepted a reversal. What he did instead was to adapt to situations and try to get the better of it. And the better of it, the Mysore forces did, because in February 1782, Tipu Sultan defeated Colonel Braithwaite at the Battle of Annagudi. Now, this was a significant Mysore victory. It demonstrated that the Second Anglo-Mysore War was far from over, no matter what the setbacks may have been just a little while ago. But the broader strategic picture remained complex. This grand alliance was starting to face troubles. While all of this was going on, the Marathas and the English had signed a Treaty of Salbai in May 1782. This had been brokered by the Maratha chieftain Mahadji Shinde, and it formally concluded another war that had been happening at the time, which was the First Anglo-Maratha War. And Warren Hastings bought off the Marathas by recognizing Madhavarao II as the legitimate Peshwa. And effectively, he removed a third of the coalition from the field of Mysore at one single stroke. Predictably, the Nizam of Hyderabad was already drifting. The grand alliance that Hyder had assembled in Bangalore with such deliberate effort was completely coming apart at the seams, exactly as he had warned Nana Fadnavis it would in that exchange of letters 2 years ago. Hyder had said it plainly then. Treaties that were negotiated through avaricious and indolent ministers are liable to be broken as soon as convenience dictates. He had been right, and now he was fighting the consequences of having joined an alliance that he himself had never fully trusted. Through all of this, the victories, the reverses, the dissolution of the alliance, the relentless campaigns across a vast theatre of war, Hyder Ali kept moving. Again, he was 60 years old, let's not forget. And he was fighting a war on multiple fronts simultaneously. The scorched earth of the Carnatic, the naval operations on the coast, Tipu's campaigns in the west, the diplomatic management of fractious allies, the logistical demands of an army of 90,000 men, and underneath all of it, something else. Something his inner circle knew and kept quiet about and feared. Hyder Ali was falling ill. The nature of his illness, the progression of it, and the precise moment when those closest to him understood, it was terminal. These details were held with the utmost secrecy, because in the world of 18th century Indian warfare, the death of a commander was not merely a personal tragedy. It was a political event of the first order. When that happened, armies would mutiny, allies would defect, enemies would advance upon them. And that secret could not be kept for much longer. The events that follow where we are in the story are of great dramatic interest. But I'm afraid that's going to have to wait until I start season 3, and I promise you that's not going to be long in coming. The next episode is going to be a recap of season 2, right from the time that we start this season with the founding of Bengaluru, right up to the point that we are right now in the Second Anglo-Mysore War. Stay tuned, that's coming up next. I am Ramjee Chandran, and this is the history of Bangalore.